Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for a Super Saturday of cycling. This show, as always, is presented by Zwift. LR here with Benji. We've got Tour de France, Flamme Zwift Stage 7, one of the hardest mountain stages I've ever seen in Women's World Tour. Klasikoa San Sebastian. We'll talk about Remco Vuelta. Is he going to win? As well as quick wrap-up of Tour de Polonia first stage. But I cannot find my camera battery charger, FYI, if you're watching on YouTube. I probably put it in Benji's bag in Paris, so we're rolling with the MacBook Pro's webcam, which are notoriously awful. Anyway, before we get to that, I'll mention our show partners Zwift, the online cycling platform that makes training fun. Whether you're a World Tour pro like Mark Cavendish or Ashley Moolman, or just starting out on your cycling journey, not only can you train and race across 9 worlds, including a France World, you can hop on social rides, so make sure you signed up to the LRP Zwift Club via the link down below to stay in the loop when I or Benji are riding during the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. If you're not on Zwift yet, you can head to Zwift.com for a free 7-day trial. Donostia San Sebastian Klasikoa, the Klasikoa San Sebastian, 222 kilometers long, the most prestigious one-day race on the Spanish calendar, obviously in the Basque Country. San Sebastian's beautiful, big cycling culture there and crazy fans. We had lining up at the race Tadej Pogacar, Remco Evenepoel, who won. This was maybe his breakout World Tour win.
Aramburu.
Who?
Alex Aramburu.
I didn't realize he was here.
He got second on Mur de Huy last week on Tour de Wallonie. He's like the GOAT at the moment.
Tour de Wallonie, fuck me. Man, David Gaudu was here apparently. Him and Stora, Jai Hindley. But yeah, the UAE team was stacked. Pog, Almeida, Ayuso, Bennett, Costa, Gibbons, Polance. It's like the Laguelia team, but with Pog and more resources. Mollema here, who won Lombardia, Nibali, Benoit, as well as Dumoulin, Simon Yates, who's done well. Like, he's ripping through the points for Bike Exchange at Castilla-y-Leon. He won that 2.1 two-day race, lovely little points race. And so, yeah, it was a really, really good start list. Maida, Butrago, Moric, Geoghegan Hart, Sivakov, Rodriguez. And the parkour is really, really hard. It's got the Uraki climb. It's just steep, irregular, nasty fake news climbs. You know that from the Basque Country. Hayiscabel, 7.5 Ks, 5.8%. But like all the climbing is either 1% or like 8%. Then it's the Erlites. They go down from Hondarribia, it's on the French border, 4Ks, 10.4%, foul climb, descent, then the Mergil Tontorra, which is 2.1 Ks, 9.8% before a descent, the one Honoré crashed on last year, and then the flat seaside run into San Sebastian. So, like, for example, Mergil Tontorra has, I think, a 300-meter section at 16%, and then the starts at 4%. So, Remco, I don't know if he was the favourite initially, Benji, but the Quick-Step team, like when we saw them riding on the front so much, you knew like they do that for a reason. Vervaeke, Knox present, and he's always seems really good. He's done a very well publicised training block. Remco always seems to come in hot. His first race out of training, he's firing.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that brings the fear that he might not be firing in a few weeks' time when it's necessary, but we'll talk about that in a bit here. When it comes to this race, we saw that Quickstep was picking it up early. We saw them picking it up on the Ijsgebel climb, putting it really hard up there, putting tempo. And one of the first victims was one of the riders that was mentioned as one of the favorites for this race, and that's Tadej Pogacar. And I don't know, I've always got a mixed feeling about riders riding after Grand Tours. You never know what you're going to get, whether it's a good rider or a bad rider when it comes to their results in the coming races after a Grand Tour. And today, Pogacar was not having the best of forms because he was dropped on the Ijsgebel climb. And it kind of continued onwards for UAE because while Quickstep was pushing forward, rider by rider was dropping on the Ijsgebel, but we went into the descent afterwards, and while Mohoric was hammering the descent like crazy, again, please drone footage, I appreciate it, I want that, because that was some crazy ass descending. Almeida apparently crashed or got behind. I think PCS reported that Almeida crashed, but I didn't see the crash, and then he came back in the valley after.
Fall too.
Okay.
But he looks spotless.
Yeah.
that was a curious thing.
He got a
I
new
don't know.
shirt on. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, I
But
think.
yeah,
Sorry,
go
just
ahead.
on the descending point. Do you think the Remco Evenepoel ban at descending that take is dead?
Yeah, I think when it comes to descending, he's good, but when it comes to reacting to situations that happen in a descent, for example, let's say you're in a descent and the rider ahead of him makes a move that is a bit unexpected, he might panic for a little bit and then make a mistake. And
I
I think
agree.
that might still exist.
I agree. I think he can descend fast, but yeah, it's like that Denmark race. If he misses judges a corner, does he react properly? But anyway, get to the next climb, the Erlights climb, and we pretty simple, just like the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift stage. Remco just goes on the front. I think EF had paced with Kudus or Caicedo at some point. Remco just goes in the front in the saddle and just paces tempo. He has an initial gap. He's got Simon Yates and maybe C-Rod and Sivakov with him, the not good C-Rod, the Ineos one, and the Spanish national champion one. And
Get out of
then
here.
Remco tests them. It didn't look like a full attack. I was like, oh, what's going on here? And then he just starts riding tempo. Simon Yates on his wheel, and he drops Simon Yates off the wheel, which was pretty crazy with like 48 Ks to go. It wasn't even, this was not like his Liège attack. He just like literally was riding to a power meter.
Yeah, he was not really doing acceleration. He was upping the tempo a tiny bit when moving to the front. Then only a few limited riders could follow him on that Elites climb. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty crazy. And the thing is, like, it's been an attrition race during the tempo of Quickstep as well. So the amount of riders in his wheel were already relatively limited. So the amount of domestiques for riders that are dropped are also limited. So it really comes down to the leaders and perhaps teams with multiple leaders, like you mentioned, Ineos, who still had multiple riders there, C-Rod and also Sivakov. And when you're able to drop them that simply on the Elites climb, knowing that he's got such an engine against riders
Ridiculous.
1v1, it's like when he was gone, I was like, okay, this is over. Goodbye, wrap
No,
up.
I stopped watching like properly. I had it on, but because the thing about San Sebastian is in between the climbs, there's flat valleys fast. Like between Erlights after the descent to the base of Mergil Tontora, it's like 15 Ks flat valley. And even if you got two teammates, and we did, a group formed behind of Sivakov, Rodriguez, Simon Yates, Teish Benoit, one of the riders who was able to carry his form from the Tour. Bauke Mollema was looking very, very good as well. He, well, didn't carry his form from the Tour. He had no form of the Tour. Now he's looking good. Tom Skirns had looked good as well for Trek Segafredo, but he got dropped, but he eventually came top 10. And Rodriguez and Sivakov got a gap on the descent. Rodriguez is an extremely good descender, and these are technical descents. If you know the Haiscabel descent to Hondarribia, oh no, they've not done that. So the Erlites descent, they're all technical, they're all narrow, and they got a gap on that group. And so the Ineos guys, they're working in the valley 1 minute behind Evenepoel already, and they literally can't do anything. And even on the Tontora, Evenepoel just opens it up the last climb. He'd clearly been like riding. He can clearly ride along at 50 k's an hour on the road bike at not near his threshold on the flat. And he can almost recover in that position where other guys like Sivakov are trying to go full gas on the flat, and he gets to Mergil Tontora and just puts another minute into everybody. Crazy performance. Solo. He could have won by 2 minutes 30 if he wanted to. Eventually, Sivakov does come in solo behind him. Really, really good performance from Sivakov. They've
Yeah.
just been the Ineos guys at altitude here in Andorra, up at like 2,400 meters, I think, and he's just already looking in really, really good shape for the Vuelta. Benoit gets clear of the others third. Rodriguez cracks a little bit. He's caught by Mollema, who comes fourth. Simon Yates cracked more, though, even though he's the last man following Evenepoel. He comes sixth, still 140 UCI points, 328, and then Schoens leads over the group behind Skelmers, Jensen, Uran, and Rota, and Roger Adria, who I would. Oh, he has a contract next year, so he won't be transferring anywhere, one would think. But Evenepoel, Benji, crazy. Well, it's actually not crazy. It's actually almost routine at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like the way he wins is usually very crazy, but it's also part of his MO, you know, it's part of his cycling. Like when
Well,
it
like when
comes
we
to
saw Viveka pacing, No
Yeah,
one was surprised he was going to go long with 50Ks to
exactly.
go. No one was surprised.
But they just couldn't react. And we've seen it multiple times now where Remco goes very early on in stages. Like it was his MO for his entire career so far. And the fact that it's still happening means that it's not solely about surprising the competition anymore. They know that it's coming, but they can't respond because they're not good enough to respond to it. And that's really the factor today. Let's talk about San Sebastian today of Remco versus San Sebastian, the previous one he won, for example. The previous one, I'm saying it, like he rode away the competition straight up, like they underestimated him.
Yep.
They didn't.
Was
They
Squinch
didn't.
there too that day?
Yeah, he was on the climb, and then Remco joined him, and they rode together. And then Remco dropped him on whatever climb it was, Tontora. I'm not sure. And then eventually Remco won. Like Remco was underestimated that day. Today he was not underestimated. He was co-favorite, and he pulled it off, and he destroyed everybody. There's a
Liège, he was
significant difference.
underestimated too.
Agreed. Agreed.
I mean, you're right. Today it's just like, what could anyone do? Like Simon Yates wasn't taken by surprise. Ineos weren't taken by surprise. They just got dropped on our alliance. But Liège, there was a little bit like Danny Martinez might not have even been in the right gear because he dropped his chain reacting to the Evenepoel attack. They had Powell's on Evenepoel's wheel at the top of Redoute. So yeah, this was different. That being said, like a lot of different form lines coming into this race. We have a lot of riders coming off the Tour de France, going into some recovery. We have riders coming off altitude camp and heavy training camps before the Vuelta. Some riders will react differently. They need a few races to get into it. Some riders can carry their form well. It looks like Evenepoel can come off training camp, like Norway was the same, and just be absolutely flying. The question is, Benji, can Evenepoel carry this form through the Vuelta? And is this performance, what does a one-day performance like this even mean for La Vuelta?
I think that's a very good question that I don't think many people have an answer on yet. We know that he's done one Grand Tour in his career at Remco Evenepoel. That was a Giro d'Italia that he just came back from the heavy injury in his career from. So to use that as the example or the stamp that defines all his Grand Tours from that point onwards is just unfair to the riders. So I don't think that Giro means that he can't do 3 weeks at any Grand Tour in the future. I think that Giro is on paper just a rider that is not well prepared for that Giro, was put in a Giro where he was rushed towards, and eventually he paid the price for it in the third week and even in the second week already. Now, when it comes to this year's Vuelta, his preparation has not really been changed despite opportunities for the change arising. For example, in the Tour de France, we had multiple riders that were out. Alaphilippe was out for a quick step in the Giro. Ilan van Wilder was out with his jaw broken or something because of LBL, if my mind serves me right. There were opportunities for Remco to hop into a different Grand Tour and ride that instead being rushed to another Grand Tour, but Quickstep decided otherwise. Quickstep decided to leave and stay with the same plan that they initially planned out initially at the start of the year, and I think that's a very good decision. We saw ups and downs in the year when it comes to Remco. We saw LBL being great, for example. We saw Carpena being pretty awful for what we expected from him. Swiss, he had a bad day, for example. Like,
Swiss was weird.
Basque was good, in my opinion.
Basque was good. Basque was good. Swiss, yeah, he won the TT. I think Thomas could have beaten him, but like, yeah, he got destroyed on the climbs, and he can't have been in. It was just weird. But that whole Tour de Suisse is just weird. Riddle COVID heat wave. It's really tough to assess. But
Yeah.
you're right. Carpena is the one that's you're like, ooh, dropped on the first climb and then did the second one quicker. That's strange. As a
Yes.
reminder to everybody for the Vuelta is the Tour de France this year. The Vuelta has a lot of time trial kilometers. It has a TTT, and it has a lot of 6 to 7%, or even 5 to 7% mountaintop finishes. There are not too many Rampas in Humanas mountaintop finishes. There's one which is like 3Ks maybe, so the differences could be 30 seconds, not huge. It's actually a very Remco Evenepoel favorable course, in my opinion. The Sierra Nevada finish, yes, that is hard and that is long, but they're not doing it till like the moon, which they were trying to do. I think it's like a little bit lower now, like 25,
Yeah.
2,700 meters. So yeah, he could crack on that climb and just lose. And that's the problem. That's what we need to see, Benji. Because it's not like Jack Haig, for example, who it's like, okay, Primoz Roglic in great shape. can and will usually drop Jack Haig on home on a Terry Covadonga. And we
Yes.
can roughly calculate he should put 30 to 60 seconds into Haig, and that's what will happen. Same in Turini. Turini Paris, I hate. Evenepoel's the other end of the spectrum. It's like, will he win the stage doing his Tour of Norway Watts? Or will he drop on the second climb of the day, like in Carpegna, and lose 10 minutes? Like, that's what we need to see. And it's impossible to know for sure. I would say his whole season's been really, I think, preparing for this Vuelta. He's gone and done heat adaptation. I believe he's been training in Alicante, not entirely sure, or down in south east of Spain. I don't expect him to have the same Carpegna problems, but you never know. Like, Quickstep and not Ineos or Jumbo in terms of like fueling and that sort of thing for a GC guy. They don't have as much experience in it. But yeah, what do you expect from Evenepoel at the La Vuelta?
That's a very good question. I think for that, we kind of need to look at the parkour. Like you mentioned, we've got those bigger climbing stages like the Sierra Nevada. Indeed, it's not up to the moon. It's not up to the moon because I think the biodiversity would be impacted if the riders would go there once every 20 years or something. I don't know. That was the reason that I read at least. But when it comes to the other stages, there's a lot of like hilly parkours where I'm like, okay, this is the kind of stage where a Remco would go early, but can he do that in a Grand Tour? That's a very different factor than, for example, in a one-day race. There's also there's not that many Rampas and Humanas in there, but there's some finishes in there that are perhaps a bit steeper. And I don't know, it's just the time trials are the ones where I'm like, okay, he should do very well here. When it comes to the team time trial, I'm also pretty certain that I see a decent time come out of the team of Quickstep in that time trial. When it let's give like an actual prediction. Like I think that
You
Remco Evenepoel,
prediction.
I think that Remco Evenepoel is going to win 2 or 3. I'll say 2 stages. I don't want
No,
to.
but GC, I don't care about stages.
Nah,
Stages of that's
it
Quickstep
matters.
2019. No, it doesn't.
2 stages, and he's gonna get 7 in GC.
Okay, he's going to win the Vuelta pretty easily, I think. Pogacar's not doing it. Hindley's it's not in cool conditions. Roglic, we don't know about his status. He seems to be recovering. So yeah, I think Evenepoel should win the Vuelta. He's obviously against Sivakov, Carapaz, Rodriguez. I think Mas has had issues. The start list is a battered start list. The Vuelta start list in March always looks really, really good. And then we get to August and we're like, oh, Pogacar's out, Roglic's injured. So yeah, I think he wins.
Wins the
It really
Vuelta.
suits him. Yeah, he should win.
Okay.
Who's gonna? No one's gonna beat him.
Well, where was Primoz and Pogacar at Tour de Suisse? Then again, yeah, it's Tour de Suisse. Where were they at Basque Country? Well, there were some riders of that, but
True. Is Martinez going? I'm kind of concerned. He looks like he's getting a little bit better. He might be going. Geoghegan Hart, I think, will also do well.
mate, Luke Plapp, where was your take? Luke Plapp was a better GC rider than Remco Evenepoel. Is that not the case anymore?
Is he doing the Vuelta?
Yeah, and Carlos Rodriguez as well, even though today he showed
okay. In that case, yes, Evenepoel second, Plapp first. But if Plapp doesn't do it, then yes, Evenepoel will win. But yeah, just the start list, I don't know. He's been peaking for it when others haven't, and the parkour is pretty favourable to him. My only concern, well, not my only, but my main concern is the Quickstep team. Alaphilippe being there is really good. Alaphilippe's a really good domestique and committed. Viveka's look good. Favenines, Masnada, Van Wilder.
Yeah.
It's not a bad team. I just worry about Quickstep riding for GC.
I worry that Alaphilippe might have certain stages where he eyes himself and therefore might not be riding for Remco on those stages. And like we saw, for example, I think
they work well
Basque?
together. Basque Remco rode for him. You are right. He let him out.
That's an example, for example. I don't know.
Okay. All right. That's our predictions. Benji's got Remco for, 2 stage wins and 7th on GC?
Yeah.
I have him for, I don't care about stage wins, winning GC.
How many stages, though? Come on.
At least one. At least one.
That's fucking boring.
Well, TT probably. Anyway, I picked him to win GC. 7th. What do you think? Matteo Fabra is going to beat him in GC? I don't know about that. Ethan Hayter. Anyway, that's Remco Evenepoel looking good at San Sebastian. What does it mean for stage racing? Who knows? Otherwise, Olaf Koy won his first World Tour race in a sprint at Tour de Pologne,
Finally.
characteristically messy. This big crash, and he beat Bauhaus. Bauhaus seems to be, he's like the Tour de Pologne merchant. And yeah, Koy looks good. He had a good lead out from Turnison. The lead outs made a really, really big difference. Cavendish and others were kept pretty far behind, and it was narrow. It seemed, as a little rise, seemed impossible to move up. So like Koy's lead out came fourth, Turnison, and then Milano, Canter, Groves, Cavendish, Demar, Tobias by 10th, who's low-key quick for Alpecin de Koenig. But yeah, good to see Koy win, Benji. Not a surprise to us. Like, he's a World Tour stage winning sprinter.
Yeah, quite certainly. We noticed in the UE Tour that he was getting closer and closer. And I think the one aspect that I'm getting out of this stage as well is that Turnison did really well when it comes to the lead out. We know that Mick van Dijk, I think, has been the lead out in certain cases throughout the year for the sprint of Olaf Koy. He's had stages where he's had no support at all, which was a real shame in my opinion. He should have had more support because he deserves it. He's a top sprinter, and I'm questioning whether, I think I saw a rumor that Turnison was leaving or something, but would he be useful as a lead out for Koy instead? Or is there
I
no
don't think he.
opportunity for Koy in Grand Tours at Jumbo?
Giro. I mean, I would send Koy to the Giro with a good support. I think he can win Giro stages. Turnison probably doesn't want to be Koy's lead out as his main job at this point in his career. Like, he's won a Tour de France stage and he's won
Yeah,
took
true.
yellow only 3 years ago. So I think Turnison doesn't want to be in that role if I had to guess. And so I think they're going to need the Van Dyke brothers or a Feeney, or I would sign someone like Dan McClay from Arkea. I would sign Dan McClay, pair him with a Feeney, Van Dyke guys, get the unit working well. And I think Sinkeldam's going to Quickstep or somewhere else. He would have been good, but I like McClay a little bit
B&B.
more.
I think
B&B? Okay.
Casper Pedersen was the one
You're right.
rumored to replace Merku at Quickstep, but with Merku doing a year
Mentorship.
with Pedersen, yes, mentorship. We will know if that is actually true once they officially announce the transfers after the August 1st, which is pretty soon.
On Monday.
Will we be doing a transfer roundup or something?
We will do emergency reactions. If the Carapaz is announced to somewhere, we will also do an overall transfer recap. But we'll announce the August calendar on tomorrow's podcast. We've done that up. We're getting professional. Welcome.
Ooh,
We've got the Tour de France recap
spicy.
on recording on Monday or Tuesday. Anyway, that's a lot from us today. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, AVV likely to seal the Tour de France Flamme Vicks with tomorrow. And then we'll be on a little holiday. Until then, ciao.